Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today's discussion will be about deductive and inductive arguments. Briefly discussing, a deductive argument is an argument that is all about necessity, which means that if the first two premises are assumed to be true, then there is no way that the conclusion would be false. Or if the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. So a deductive argument is all about necessity. On the other hand, inductive arguments are all about probabilities. If the premise is assumed to be true, then it is improbable that the conclusion of an argument could be false. And inductive arguments are assertions that use specific premises or observations to make a broader generalization. Examples 1. All leaders are scientists. Roni is a leader. Hence, Roni is a scientist. Let's examine this example. If we stand by a statement that proves that all leaders are scientists and Roni is a leader, then there is no way that Roni could not be a scientist. Because he already belongs to the group of leaders. Based on the above examples, anyone who belongs to the group of leaders would be entitled to the title of scientist. And Roni is leader, and the conclusion can be that Roni is a scientist. Thus the conclusion follows strictly or necessarily from the given premises. And here there are no statements that make this argument probabilistic, so the argument is said to be a deductive argument. Example 2. All the pandas that I saw while traveling in China are black, therefore, all pandas are black. The second example is clearly inductive. Just because some of us have seen pandas somewhere whose color is black doesn't lead us to conclude that all pandas are black. This is a probabilistic conclusion that proceeds from specific observation to generalization and concludes that all pandas over the world are black. Therefore, the argument is inductive. Specifically, the arguer proceed from specific cases to generalization. The three factors. There are three factors that helps to identify deductive from inductive arguments. The first factor is indicator words. Both deductive and inductive argument has their own indicator words. Some of the deductive indicator words are necessarily, absolutely, and certainly. And some of the inductive indicator words are probably, improbable, likely, unlikely, plausible, and implausible. If we got such word in the argument, then we can easily identify deductive argument from inductive argument. The second factor is strength of the inferential claim. That means how the conclusion follows from the premises. Is it necessarily or probably? If the conclusion follow necessarily, the argument said to be deductive. And if the conclusion follow probably, the argument said to be inductive. The third factor is forms of argumentation. Both deductive and inductive arguments has their own forms of argumentation. Firstly, let's discuss about deductive forms of argumentation. The first deductive form is argument from mathematics. Argument from mathematics is a deductive argument. And the conclusion depends on some geometric or mathematical measurement. Or in general, any mathematical reasoning is entitled to be deductive argument. Example: John has purchased 3 new jeans for himself. And 1 more pair for his mother. As a result, Johann purchased 4 pairs of jeans. Here, the conclusion depends on adding the 3 pairs of jeans to the other pair that John bought for his mother. Thus, the arguments are specifically said to be arguments from mathematics or generally deductive arguments. The second deductive form is argument from definition. Argument from definition is a deductive argument. And the conclusion follow from the definition of the word that is being used in the premises. Example: John is a malcontent student, therefore he is rebellious. Here, the conclusion depends on defining the word malcontent, which means someone who is rebelling. Therefore, the conclusion depends on defining the word malcontent, which is mentioned in the premises. Therefore, such arguments is deductive, or more specifically argument from definition. The third deductive form is categorical syllogism. First of all, syllogism means having 2 premises and 1 conclusion. And, in categorical syllogism, each statement begin with one of the word all, some and no. Example, all Europeans are Christian. No Christian are Muslim. Therefore, no European are Muslim. Here, if we assume that all Europeans are Christians, and if there are no Christians who are Muslims, then there is no way that a European can be a Muslim. Thus, such an argument is specifically said to be a categorical syllogism or deductive argument in general. The fourth deductive form is hypothetical syllogism. Hypothetical syllogism is a deductive argument that has conditional statements with other statements proving the conditional statements. Example: if Rose is rich, then she must drive a Rolls-Royce car. Rose is rich. Hence, Rose drive Rolls-Royce car. Here, the statements provide us with evidence that if Rose is rich, then she must drive a Rolls-Royce. And the second premise proves that Rose is wealthy. So it is certain to conclude that Rose drives a Rolls-Royce car. Thus, such an argument is specifically said to be a hypothetical syllogism or deductive argument in general. The fifth deductive form is disjunctive syllogism. Disjunctive syllogism is a deductive argument that having disjunctive statements or either-or statements. Example: either Joe Biden or Donald Trump is a USA president. Trump isn't a USA president. As a result, Joe Biden is the President of the United States of America. There are two pieces of evidence presented here. Either Biden or Trump is the President of the United States of America. And the second premise proves that Trump is not the USA President. So Biden should be the USA President, therefore, the argument is said to be a disjunctive syllogism. Or more generally a deductive argument. Now let's proceed to the inductive forms of argumentation. The first inductive form is argument from analogy. Argument from analogy is an inductive argument. And the conclusion depends on the similarity between two things or state of affairs. Example: there is life on the moon because it has an atmosphere that contains oxygen just like the Earth. As an assumption, one of the similar things that the moon and Earth share is that the moon has an atmosphere that contains oxygen just like Earth does. However, just because the moon has oxygen like Earth doesn't lead us to conclude that there would be life on the moon. The conclusion probably follows from the premises by taking some features from the Earth that have life. The second inductive form is arguments from generalization. Arguments from generalization, in an inductive argument. And the argument proceed from particular to universal. Or concluding from a specific case or specific observation to generalization is entitled inductive or, more specifically, argument from generalization. Example: I found a guy from Mexico. And he is the most racist person I have ever seen. Therefore, people from Mexico are racist. Here, the arguer proceeds from specific observation to generalization. Just because one person in Mexico is racist doesn't mean that all Mexicans are racist at all. Therefore, the arguer made a probabilistic argument and specifically an argument from generalization. The third inductive form is argument based on authority. Argument based on authority is an inductive argument and the conclusion depends on presumed authority or witness. Example: Stephen Hawking was an astrophysicist who believed in the Big Bang theory. As a result, we can assume this theory is true. After all, Stephen Hawking knew more than most people about astrophysics. So we can probably trust his opinion. And it may also be true that the Big Bang theory is the best explanation for the origins of the universe. However, this argument is inductive. Because, we would need evidence to put forward a real argument here, not just an expert opinion. In addition, the argument from authority is said to be inductive because the authority might be biased, prejudiced, etc. The last inductive forms of argumentation is argument based on sign. Argument based on sign is an inductive argument that proceed from sign to things. Example: the sign on the side of the road says "Welcome to London." It follows that we are entering into London. This argument said to be inductive, because the sign might be displaced or changed. Therefore, not all signs are completely solid evidence, though. And an evidence that isn't drawn from solid, then it will be regarded as inductive.